Crowds cheer as Prince William rides in style to Buckingham Palace. Some came alone, others with family and friends. Tourists mixed with local residents, all standing patiently along the roadside. Many had woken up early, some traveling from far places, just to be part of this moment. There was excitement, but also a calm respect, as if everyone understood they were about to witness something meaningful. The city itself seemed to wake up slowly. Soft light touched the buildings, and the cool morning breeze moved gently through the streets. Police officers and security teams were already in place, guiding people and making sure everything stayed peaceful. No one complained. In fact, most people smiled and followed instructions willingly. They knew events like this required care and order. It made the moment feel official and important. People talked quietly among themselves. Some shared stories of other royal moments they had seen before. Others spoke about Prince William, remembering him as a young boy walking behind his mother many years ago. Time had passed, and now he stood as a strong and confident royal figure. For many in the crowd, this thought brought emotion. They felt like they had grown up alongside him, watching his journey through the years. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, waving small flags with excitement. Some asked questions, curious about what they were about to see. Parents explained gently, telling them about the royal family, the palace, and the traditions that had lasted for generations. Tourists held cameras and phones, checking angles and settings, hoping to capture the perfect moment. Everyone wanted to remember this day. As the minutes passed, the crowd slowly grew larger. The sound of footsteps, soft conversations, and distant city noise blended together. Despite the number of people, there was no chaos. Instead, there was patience. People waited calmly, knowing that something special was coming. Street vendors nearby sold tea and snacks, adding warmth to the cool morning. The smell of fresh drinks mixed with the crisp air, making the wait more comfortable. News reporters and photographers prepared their equipment. They checked microphones, adjusted cameras, and spoke quietly with their teams. This event would be shared with people around the world, and they wanted to capture every detail. Still, even with media presence, the focus remained on the moment itself, not just the coverage. It felt like history was slowly unfolding, step by step. Some elderly people stood near the front, leaning on walking sticks but refusing to sit down. They had lived through many royal events in their lifetime and did not want to miss this one. Their faces showed pride and deep respect. Nearby, young adults chatted excitedly, sharing the event live on social media. Different generations stood together, connected by a shared interest and a shared moment. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere, subtle but noticeable. Conversations became quieter. People looked down the road, sensing that the moment was getting closer. Security teams straightened their posture, and photographers lifted their cameras. A feeling of anticipation spread through the crowd, like a gentle wave. For Prince William, the day also began with responsibility. Inside his residence, preparations were underway. His schedule was planned carefully, every detail considered. Public appearances were not just about showing up, they carried meaning. They represented duty, service, and connection with the people. As he prepared to ride toward Buckingham Palace, he understood the importance of the moment ahead. He was aware that people had gathered early just to see him. This knowledge added weight to the day. He was not riding only for ceremony, but also to represent stability and continuity. Each appearance was a reminder of the role he carried and the expectations placed upon him. Still, he approached the day with calm confidence, shaped by years of experience. Back on the streets, the crowd waited patiently. Some people held small banners with kind messages. Others simply stood quietly, taking in the surroundings. The palace in the distance looked grand and timeless, standing as it had for centuries. Its presence reminded everyone of the long history connected to this place and the people who had passed through its gates. The sky had brightened now, and sunlight reflected off windows and flags. The day promised to be clear and pleasant. People adjusted their jackets and scarves, feeling more comfortable as the morning warmed. A few birds flew overhead, their sounds blending naturally with the city's rhythm. It was a peaceful scene, despite the size of the gathering. A distant sound began to draw attention. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, but it slowly grew clearer. People leaned forward slightly, eyes focused ahead. Some raised their phones, ready to record. Others simply watched, wanting to experience the moment without a screen in front of them. Excitement returned, stronger than before. Whispers moved through the crowd. "He's coming." The words passed quietly from person to person. Smiles appeared and a few people clapped softly, though the main moment had not yet arrived. Children grew more energetic, waving their flags faster. Parents gently reminded them to be patient. The city seemed to pause for a brief moment. Traffic was stopped, and the usual rush of daily life slowed down. For this short time, everyone shared the same focus. It did not matter where they came from or why they were there. They were united by curiosity, respect, and anticipation. As the sound grew closer, the excitement became impossible to ignore. The crowd straightened, hearts beating a little faster. This was not just about seeing a prince ride to the palace. It was about being part of a shared experience, a moment that would later become a memory told to others. The morning that had started quietly was now filled with emotion and expectation. It marked the beginning of a day that many would remember for a long time. Something meaningful was about to happen, and everyone present knew they were witnessing the opening of a moment that mattered. The sound that people had been waiting for finally became clear. At first, it was distant and soft, but soon it echoed through the street. The crowd grew silent almost at once, as if everyone understood this was the moment they had been waiting for. Heads turned in the same direction, eyes focused ahead. Phones were raised carefully, and cameras clicked as people prepared to capture what they were about to see. Then Prince William appeared, riding forward with calm confidence. He moved at a steady pace, balanced and composed, showing complete control. His posture was upright and his expression was relaxed yet focused. He looked every bit the royal figure people expected, but there was also something familiar and warm about him. He did not rush. Instead, he allowed the moment to unfold naturally. As soon as the crowd recognized him clearly, cheers broke out. The sound spread quickly, growing louder with every second. People waved flags high in the air, some calling out his name, others simply clapping with joy. The excitement felt honest and full of pride. This was not forced celebration. It came from genuine respect and admiration. Prince William responded in a way that touched many hearts. He smiled and raised his hand in a gentle wave. It was not dramatic or exaggerated, but it felt sincere. He looked toward different sections of the crowd, acknowledging their presence. For those standing there, that simple gesture meant a lot. They felt seen and appreciated. Children pointed excitedly, their faces glowing with happiness. Some jumped up and down, barely able to control their energy. Parents smiled as they watched their children experience something special. For many young ones, this was their first time seeing a royal figure in person. It became a moment they would remember for years. Photographers worked quickly, capturing every angle. News cameras followed his movement closely, knowing this ride symbolized more than just travel. It represented continuity, tradition, and responsibility. Still, even with all the attention, Prince William remained calm. His experience in public life showed clearly. He was comfortable in the spotlight, yet never seemed distant. As he moved forward, the crowd's excitement continued to build. People leaned closer, hoping for a clearer view. Some waved with both hands, others held their phones steady, afraid to miss even a second. There was a sense of unity among the people. Strangers smiled at one another, sharing the joy of the moment. Many in the crowd noticed his simple but elegant style. Everything about his appearance reflected dignity and respect for the occasion. It was clear that this was not just a casual ride. It was part of a larger duty, a public appearance that carried meaning. Every detail seemed carefully considered, yet nothing felt stiff or unnatural. As he passed by different sections of the street, the cheers followed him like a wave. When one group quieted, another grew louder. The sound traveled with him, creating a moving celebration. People who arrived late tried to find space just to catch a glimpse. Even a brief look felt worth the effort. Some elderly spectators wiped tears from their eyes. They had witnessed many changes over the years, but moments like this still touched them deeply. Seeing a future leader so close brought feelings of reassurance and pride. It reminded them that traditions continued, shaped by new generations. Prince William occasionally nodded his head slightly, a small gesture that showed appreciation. He did not rush past the people. Instead, he allowed the connection to form, even if only for a few seconds. Those seconds mattered. For the crowd, it felt personal. The atmosphere was full of positive energy. There was no tension, no disorder. Security teams remained alert but relaxed, clearly confident that everything was under control. The people followed rules naturally, guided by shared respect for the event and for one another. As he continued forward, some people began clapping in rhythm, creating a steady sound that added to the excitement. Others cheered louder, unable to hide their joy. Flags moved back and forth, catching the light of the morning sun. The scene looked almost unreal, like something taken from a historic painting. Prince William's ride was smooth and steady, showing discipline and focus. It reminded people that behind the public image was a man trained for responsibility. He had grown up in the public eye, learning from experience. That growth was visible now, reflected in his calm movements and confident presence. People spoke quietly among themselves as he passed. Some said how proud they felt. Others talked about how meaningful it was to see him representing the country with such grace. Tourists whispered excitedly, amazed that they were witnessing something so special during their visit. The closer he moved toward Buckingham Palace, the stronger the emotions became. The palace symbolized history and duty, and seeing him ride toward it made the moment feel even more powerful. It felt like a living reminder of tradition moving forward through time. Children continued waving until their arms grew tired. Parents lifted them higher so they would not miss the view. Laughter and cheers blended together, creating a joyful sound that filled the street. Even people watching from nearby buildings leaned out of windows to see. Prince William kept his focus forward but never ignored the people around him. His expressions remained kind and open. He showed confidence without pride, strength without distance. This balance made a strong impression on everyone watching. As he moved farther along the route, people behind him began sharing what they had just seen. They replayed videos on their phones, smiling and pointing at the screen. Some hugged their loved ones, happy they had shared this moment together. The energy did not fade quickly. Even after he passed, the crowd remained alive with excitement. Conversations continued, laughter echoed, and smiles stayed bright. People felt they had been part of something important, even if it lasted only a short time. This part of the journey showed more than a royal appearance. It showed connection. It showed respect between a prince and the people. It showed how a simple ride, done with sincerity and calm, could leave a deep impression. As Prince William continued toward Buckingham Palace, the cheers followed him, fading slowly with distance but remaining strong in memory. The crowd watched until he was no longer visible, holding onto the feeling that this moment had given them. It was not just something they saw. It was something they felt, and that feeling stayed with them long after he had moved on. As the ride continued, something deeper began to form between Prince William and the people watching him. It was more than excitement now. It was a feeling of connection that could be sensed in the air. The cheers were still loud, but they carried warmth and respect rather than simple excitement. Many people were not just watching a royal figure pass by. They were reflecting on what he represented to them. For some in the crowd, Prince William symbolized continuity. They remembered stories told by their parents and grandparents about earlier generations of the royal family. They had seen photos, watched old recordings, and heard memories shared at family gatherings. Now, standing there in person, they felt part of that long story. Seeing him ride calmly through the streets made history feel real and close. Others saw him as a modern figure who understood the changing world. They admired how he balanced tradition with a more open and approachable attitude. As he acknowledged the crowd with small gestures and gentle expressions, people felt he understood them. This feeling created trust, and trust turned into quiet pride. Some spectators spoke softly about moments from his past that had shaped him. They remembered difficult times he had faced while growing up in the public eye. They had watched him learn, grow, and take on responsibility step by step. Seeing him now, confident and steady, felt meaningful. It reminded them that growth comes from experience and patience. A woman in the crowd held her phone but lowered it after a moment. She decided she did not want to see this moment through a screen. She wanted to remember it with her own eyes. Around her, others made the same choice. They watched quietly, allowing the feeling of the moment to stay with them naturally. Children continued to wave, but some also became curious. They asked their parents why everyone cared so much. Parents explained in simple words, talking about leadership, service, and responsibility. They spoke about how Prince William was preparing for a role that would one day affect the whole country. These small conversations planted ideas in young minds. The cheers softened at times, turning into applause or gentle clapping. This change did not mean excitement was fading. Instead, it showed a deeper respect. People were not just reacting to what they saw. They were acknowledging the meaning behind it. Prince William seemed aware of this shift. His expressions showed understanding. He remained calm and focused, yet open. He did not need grand gestures to connect with the people. His presence alone was enough. That quiet confidence spoke louder than words. Some in the crowd remembered seeing him years ago during other public events. They compared those memories with what they saw now. The difference was clear. He had become more assured, more comfortable in his role. This growth reassured many people. It suggested stability and readiness for the future. The connection also worked the other way. Prince William was not riding through empty streets or distant crowds. He was surrounded by real people, each with their own stories and hopes. Their cheers were not just noise. They were expressions of support. That support carried weight. An elderly man near the front leaned slightly forward, watching carefully. He had followed royal events his entire life. To him, moments like this were reminders that time moves on but values can remain. He smiled softly, feeling thankful that he could still witness such occasions. Nearby, a young couple held hands, sharing the moment quietly. They spoke about how this day would become a story they might tell their children one day. For them, it was not just about the prince. It was about being part of a shared national memory. The street itself seemed to hold the energy of the crowd. Buildings stood tall and still, as they had for generations. They had witnessed countless moments like this, each one different, yet connected. Prince William's ride added another chapter to that long story. As he moved forward, some people noticed how carefully everything was organized. This order reflected discipline and respect, values often linked with leadership. Yet within that structure, there was warmth and humanity. That balance impressed many observers. People continued to exchange smiles with strangers beside them. They shared brief comments, nods, and quiet laughter. In that moment, differences faded. Backgrounds, ages, and opinions mattered less. What mattered was the shared experience. Prince William's calm presence seemed to encourage this unity. He did not demand attention. It came naturally. His steady pace allowed people to truly see him, not just glance as he passed. That made the moment feel longer and more meaningful. As the palace drew closer, emotions deepened. People understood that this ride was leading him back to a place filled with responsibility. Buckingham Palace was not just a building. It was a symbol of duty, history, and service. Watching him approach, it reminded everyone of the weight he carried. Some spectators felt a sense of reassurance. They believed that leadership built on calm strength and respect could guide the future well. Others simply felt proud to witness a moment of tradition continuing in a peaceful way. The connection formed during this part of the journey was quiet but powerful. It did not rely on loud cheers alone. It came from shared understanding and mutual respect. It showed how leadership and public trust are built over time through consistency and sincerity. As Prince William continued onward, the crowd's energy followed him, even as distance grew. People remained focused until he was almost out of sight. They did not rush to leave. They stayed, holding onto the feeling that had settled among them. Conversations began again, but they were softer now. People spoke thoughtfully, reflecting on what they had just experienced. Some felt inspired, others felt comforted, many felt both. This part of the journey revealed something important. It showed that connection does not always come from words or grand actions. Sometimes it comes from presence, respect, and shared moments. Prince William's ride had created that connection, and it stayed with the people long after he moved forward toward the palace. The crowd slowly relaxed, but the bond they felt did not disappear. It remained in their thoughts, their conversations, and their memories. This moment had become more than a public event. It had become a quiet reminder of unity, responsibility, and shared history, felt by everyone who stood there and watched. As Prince William moved closer to Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere slowly began to change. The excitement was still there, but it became calmer and more thoughtful. People understood that this part of the journey was important. It was not just about being seen by the public anymore. It was about arriving at a place that carried deep meaning and responsibility. The palace gates came into clearer view, standing tall and strong. Their presence reminded everyone of history, tradition, and duty. For centuries, leaders had passed through these gates, each carrying the weight of their time. Now Prince William approached them, continuing that long line. The crowd watched with quiet attention, knowing this moment symbolized more than a simple arrival. The cheers softened into steady applause. Some people stopped waving and simply watched. Others lowered their phones, choosing to take in the moment fully. There was respect in the silence that followed the earlier excitement. It showed understanding of what this place represented. Prince William remained focused as he neared the palace. His posture stayed steady, and his expression was calm. He knew that stepping through those gates meant stepping into duty. Every visit to the palace came with responsibility, decisions, and expectations. This ride was a visible reminder of that role. Security around the palace became more noticeable, yet it did not disturb the calm. Everything moved smoothly, guided by planning and discipline. The organized movement reflected the seriousness of the location. People accepted these measures easily, understanding their purpose. As he passed the final stretch of the route, Prince William gave one more gentle wave. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. It felt like a quiet thank you to the people who had gathered, waited, and supported him. The crowd responded with warm applause, appreciating the acknowledgement. Some in the crowd felt a sense of pride rise in their chest. They were witnessing not just a royal figure, but a person prepared to serve. This feeling was not loud or dramatic. It was steady and reassuring. It made the moment feel important without being overwhelming. Children who had been waving earlier now watched more quietly. Parents leaned down to explain what the palace was and why it mattered. They spoke about responsibility and service in simple words. These small lessons made the moment educational as well as memorable. The palace itself stood silent, its walls holding countless stories. It had seen moments of joy and challenge, celebration and duty. As Prince William approached, it seemed to welcome him, just as it had welcomed many before. This silent connection between person and place added depth to the moment. Prince William crossed into the palace grounds, and the crowd knew this part of the journey was nearing its end. Applause continued, but it was gentle now. People respected the transition from public space to official duty. They understood that what happened beyond the gates would not be seen, but it was no less important. As he moved inside, the crowd watched until he was no longer visible. Some people stood on their toes, trying to catch a final glimpse. Others simply stayed still, allowing the moment to settle. When he disappeared from view, there was a brief pause, as if everyone needed a second to reflect. Inside the palace, the mood shifted completely. The open energy of the street gave way to focus and purpose. This was where planning, meetings, and decisions took place. For Prince William, entering the palace meant turning his attention fully to duty. The ride had been public, but the work ahead was serious and private. Outside, the crowd slowly began to relax. Conversations restarted, but they were quieter and more thoughtful. People shared their feelings with those around them. Some spoke about how proud they felt. Others mentioned how peaceful the event had been. Many agreed that the moment had felt meaningful. Elderly spectators spoke softly about past royal moments they had witnessed. They compared this one with others, noting the calm strength Prince William had shown. Younger people listened with interest, learning from their stories. These shared reflections added another layer to the experience. Tourists checked their photos and videos, smiling at what they had captured. Even those who did not get the perfect picture felt satisfied. They had been there, and that mattered more than any image. The memory itself felt complete. The street slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Barriers were removed and people began to move along, yet something remained in the air. It was a quiet sense of having witnessed something special, not loud or dramatic, but steady and meaningful. For many, the palace gates became a symbol in their thoughts. They represented the balance between public connection and private responsibility. Prince William's arrival had shown both. He had connected with the people openly, then stepped into duty with focus. Some parents held their children's hands tightly as they prepared to leave. They knew this day would become a story they would tell again. It was not just about seeing a prince. It was about showing their children a moment of tradition and respect. As the crowd slowly dispersed, people carried the experience with them. Some felt inspired by the calm strength they had seen. Others felt comforted by the sense of continuity. Many felt both at the same time. This part of the journey marked a turning point. The public celebration had met the seriousness of duty. The excitement had blended into respect. Prince William's ride to Buckingham Palace had reached its purpose. The palace stood quietly once more, holding the moment within its walls. Outside, life moved on, but the memory stayed. The arrival had been smooth, respectful, and meaningful. It showed how tradition continues not through noise, but through steady presence and commitment. As people walked away, they knew they had seen more than a simple arrival. They had witnessed responsibility in motion. The moment reminded them that leadership is not just about being seen. It is about stepping forward when duty calls, with calm and respect guiding every move. After Prince William had entered Buckingham Palace and the gates stood quietly once again, the moment did not simply end. It stayed alive in the minds of everyone who had been there. People did not rush away immediately. Many stood still for a few moments, as if they wanted to hold on to the feeling a little longer. It was clear that this experience had touched them in a gentle but lasting way. Slowly, small groups began to talk. Friends shared their thoughts, families discussed what they had seen, and strangers exchanged smiles as if they already knew each other. There was a feeling of togetherness that did not disappear just because the event was over. The crowd had come for one reason, but they were leaving with something more, a shared memory. Some people replayed the moment in their minds. They remembered the calm ride, the respectful waves, and the peaceful energy of the crowd. It was not a loud or dramatic event, but that was what made it special. Everything felt balanced and sincere. Many felt thankful that they had chosen to come that morning. Parents spoke gently to their children as they walked away. They explained why the day mattered and what it meant to see a future leader carry responsibility with calm confidence. Children listened carefully, holding flags or small souvenirs. Even if they did not fully understand everything, they could sense that the moment had importance. Elderly spectators moved slowly, supported by family members or walking sticks. Their faces showed quiet satisfaction. They had seen many changes over the years, but moments like this reassured them that tradition could continue with grace. Some shared stories from their past, connecting today's event with memories from long ago. Tourists gathered nearby, checking photos and videos they had captured. They spoke excitedly in different languages, amazed that they had witnessed something so meaningful during their visit. Even those who had only seen a brief moment felt lucky. They knew this was not something that happened every day. As people began to leave, the streets gradually returned to their normal rhythm. Traffic resumed, shops opened fully, and the sounds of daily life grew stronger. Yet something had changed, even if only slightly. The calm energy of the morning lingered like a soft echo. Inside Buckingham Palace, Prince William's focus had fully shifted to duty. The ride was now behind him, and the responsibilities ahead required attention and care. Meetings, discussions, and planning filled his schedule. These moments were not seen by the public, but they were just as important. The public appearance was only one part of a much larger role. For Prince William, the cheers and smiles from the crowd stayed with him. They were reminders of the trust placed in him. That trust did not come easily, and it could not be taken lightly. Every public moment carried responsibility, and every decision mattered. The connection with the people strengthened his sense of purpose. Outside, people continued to talk about the event throughout the day. Photos were shared, messages were sent, and stories were told to those who could not attend. Social conversations were filled with positive words and reflections. Many described how peaceful and respectful the moment had been. Some people who had watched from a distance later wished they had been closer. Others felt content simply knowing they had witnessed something meaningful. Everyone took away something different, but the feeling of shared experience remained common. In the days that followed, the memory stayed alive. People remembered where they had stood, who they had been with, and how they had felt. For some, it became a small but bright moment during an otherwise busy life. For others, it became a symbol of continuity and hope. Children drew pictures at home, showing flags, crowds, and a prince riding proudly. Parents smiled at these drawings, realizing that the memory had already taken root. Teachers later spoke about the event in classrooms, using it as an example of tradition and leadership. The story of that day was not written in headlines alone. It lived in conversations, memories, and quiet reflections. It became one of those moments people remember not because it was loud, but because it felt real and sincere. Prince William's ride to Buckingham Palace was now complete, but its impact continued. It reminded people that leadership is not only about authority. It is about presence, respect, and connection. It is about understanding the role one plays in the lives of others. For many, the event strengthened their sense of belonging. They felt part of something larger than themselves. Standing together, cheering together, and sharing the moment created a bond that went beyond words. As time passed, the details of the day might fade, but the feeling would remain. The calm pride, the shared respect, and the quiet joy would stay with those who witnessed it. These feelings were not tied to one person alone, but to the idea of service and responsibility carried forward. The palace continued its daily rhythm just as it always had. Behind its walls, work continued. Outside, life moved on. Yet the connection formed that day did not disappear. It became part of a larger story that continues to unfold. In the end, the true value of the moment was not measured by how many people attended or how many photos were taken. It was measured by how people felt when they left. They left with calm hearts, thoughtful minds, and a sense of shared history. The crowds that had once cheered were now scattered across the city, returning to their routines. But something stayed with them. They had witnessed responsibility in motion and tradition carried with care. This final part of the journey was not about arrival or departure. It was about reflection. It was about understanding that meaningful moments do not always need grand displays. Sometimes they are quiet, respectful, and deeply human. Prince William's ride became one of those moments, not because of speed or show, but because of sincerity and calm strength. And for everyone who watched, it became a memory worth keeping, a reminder that history continues, one steady step at a time.